Okay, well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure for me. Is that too loud? Is that okay? All right. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. I love talking to business leaders. I really do. I really enjoy that. In 1938, my father started a furniture reupholstery and refinishing business right here in Wichita Falls. You know, in the late 50s, and this is back in the time when we didn't have retail stores like you know them today, like furniture retail stores. So people would ask my dad to redo just about all the furniture in the home. Now, very often these people were also moving, and my dad, listening to the customers, they were asking him, would you mind moving us as well? Because they're afraid the movers were going to tear up all of the redone furniture. Well, what he did there in the late 50s, he started a local moving and storage company right here in Wichita Falls. Now, when I was a little boy, I was very fortunate to hang out with my dad. I mean, I knew who the people that handled the insurance, the people that who he did banking with. I knew the people that even repaired the trucks, and even the people that put the gasoline in the trucks. You know, this is back in the days when we had full service gasoline stations, if you can imagine that. Well, when I was 12 years old, my dad let me go out on my first moving job. And shortly before I was about ready to go out, he said, Bobby, now when you go out there, I don't want you to act like the boss's son. Now, I don't know about you, at 12 years old, somehow I clearly understood what my dad was telling me. So from that day forward, when I went out there on that first moving job, I did the jobs and the work that the others didn't want to do. I would run between the truck and the house and the truck. I would take one break to everybody's two breaks, and I conducted myself that way all the way through even high school and college while working for him. And I didn't realize the value that was going to be until a few years later. Well, I was also very fortunate to graduate from Midwestern State University in 3 years at the age of 20. Now, within a couple months, my college buddies were about ready to, have their last fall semester, and we gathered, together before school was about ready to start again. And one of my friends walked up to me and said, Bobby, we just got a phone call, and they have taken your dad to the emergency room. Well, we piled in the car, rushed down to the emergency room, and I can still remember today walking in those double doors at the emergency room. My mom was seated over here on the left. She stood up as I was walking in the door, and our long-term family doctor walked up about that same time. And he said, I couldn't save him. And right then, my mom and I were just stunned. I mean, absolutely stunned. And right then, I was also being thrust to become the leader of this small family business of 5 employees. Now, what I learned just within a couple months after that, and this is in 1973, so what I'm about ready to share with you, it's a lot of money today, but in 1973, it was like a mountain, and that was that we were $70,000 in debt, and our total gross revenue was less than $90,000. You can see we were pretty well upside down. And I tell you what, my dad had 3 bankers, and 2 of them wanted to shut us down, which you can maybe understand why. The third one wanted to give me a chance, and somehow he convinced the other 2 to give me a chance. And I tell you, I was just finding myself scraping and scraping and scraping just to make it work. In fact, my wife, she still reminds me today, because I used to give her only $20 to go to buy groceries for the whole week. And you know, you can't buy much with $20. But I had to have a very uncomfortable conversation with those 5 employees. And I met with them one-on-one, and I needed to ask them to take a pay cut. Now, you can imagine today, if you ask your employees to take a pay cut, it's not going to be a happy day, is it? And you know what surprised me? I got 100% acceptance. And I tell you what, when I was talking with them, I mean, I was shaking, my lips were shaking. I mean, I'm 20 years old, having to have this very uncomfortable conversation with people I had worked side by side for several years. But you know, one thing I learned from that is that my dad really took care of his employees. He paid them well, and they had a lot of respect for him. But the other thing I learned is that all those years I had worked side by side, I had earned their respect as well. And they had the confidence to allow me to be the leader of this new business that my family was trying to struggle with. You know, one of the other things I had to do is to draw down some of the debt is to sell my personal car. And then, you know, of course, that put me on foot, so I asked my dad furnished a vehicle to 2 of the 5 employees, and I had to ask one of them, would you mind, as you drive by my home every day, pick me up and then take me home later on? And he agreed to do that, and he did it for almost 2 years. One of the things that, with a lot of people helping me, from 1973 through the end of 1974, you know, this is a long time ago, with a lot of people helping me, we grew our revenue by 252%. And we had the highest profit that we had ever had in the history of that company. And from that point forward, our company just kept growing, until I sold the company in 2011 with over 150 employees, and I sold to a public traded company on the stock market. Many people here in Wichita Falls don't even know this, but 99% of our business was outside of Wichita Falls. We were moving people like from California to Illinois, from Florida to Virginia, from the state of Washington to the state of Connecticut. That was most of our business. Now, right here in Wichita Falls, some of y'all may be using this service. I started the Paper Pig, which is a document shredding business here that's been very successful. Well, with that, is that something significant happened in the year 2005. It's when I introduced our core values to our employees. It was who I am and who we were as an organization. And one thing that our people knew clearly what our purpose and what our vision was, and they had known it for many years. But this is one little piece of missing ingredient in the success of our business. And but these core values, these were how our people were to behave as we pursued the purpose, as we pursued our vision, as we pursued our strategies, as we pursued our tactical plans and our measurable goals. But one thing that occurred to me in that year 2005 is that I wanted to be a values-driven company that achieve results, not a results-driven company that has values. And I can assure you, because I've studied this for a lot and reviewed a lot of research, there is a huge difference between those two companies. Let me just share with you the kind of results we were seeing from 2005 to 2011. Now, you know, you pretty well know, you probably, you know, in late 07, late 08, in 08, 09, 2010, you know what the economy was doing during that time period. I mean, it was absolutely in the tank. and many of you here in this audience very likely were impacted by the economy during that time period. But even at that, from 2005 to 2011, is that our revenue grew almost 5 times and our profits grew over 5 times during that time period. And the 2 years leading up to me selling the company, we were invited and we participated and we were awarded to be recognized as one of the 100 best companies to work for in the state of Texas. Well, today I'd like to talk with you a little bit about the 3 pillars of success. And everyone in this room can achieve lasting significance by embracing these 3 pillars of success, and that is to pursue personal growth, live with integrity, and to add value to others. Let's talk about the first one, dealing with pursue personal growth. You know, when I was a little boy, I had a lot of curiosity, and my parents would probably, because I was full of energy, my parents would have told you that I was ADDDDDDDDD, and so I think this is the reason why they started me in kindergarten 1 year younger than everybody else in kindergarten. Now, you know, I was just an average student, sometimes a below average student, but something happened in the 5th grade. During the spring semester, I received an F in science. Now, I tried to tell my parents, I didn't even remember us even studying science that 6 weeks. Well, that may tell you why I made an F in it. But, you know, just within a few weeks later, my dad and I, we were in the back yard of our home, and we were just pitching, you know, and catching the baseball. We were just talking and chatting, and we were just talking about things. And he just happened to say, Bobby, you know, this last 6 weeks of this year, why don't you see how well you can do in school? Well, I accepted that as a very serious challenge. And I took the role as to trying to achieve the best grades I could get that last 6 weeks. And when we got the results, I was surprised how well I did. And of course, you can imagine my parents were shocked, you know, how well I did. And you know, from that point forward, I began to understand my potential for my personal growth, and I became a lifelong learner. I mean, from that point forward and throughout all of school and college, I was always at the top of my class. And still today, I spend 2 or 3 hours a day just studying and reading and looking at things even today. But you know, one thing that John Maxwell has said, that live to learn and you will really learn to live. In our company, we had what was called a button. We call it the on and in button. And what it stood for is work on the business while we work in the business. And one thing I find, especially small business, is that the leaders are working very heavily in the business, in the tactical things of the business, and without pausing to think about how to work on the business. Now, for us in our company, it meant to grow yourself, to grow your people, and to grow your business. Now, there's an interesting leadership paradox here, because most leaders, especially small business, think the first thing they need to do is to grow their business. But the truth is, the first thing you need to do is to grow you. You are the lid to the growth of your business. And your people will never grow any more than you. And if they do, you know, in this time of a tight labor market, if your employees are growing faster than you, Your best employees will leave you and find somebody that has a higher lid than you. One thing I've learned is that your perspective on life, your perspective on your family, your perspective on your business is limited based on your personal growth. Well, the challenge is when you leave here today is to commit that you're going to learn something new every day. Well, we've been talking about pursue personal growth, and now let's talk about live with integrity. You know, I've always, as starting very young age, I was always seeking truth. And one thing that I found that for me is to live with integrity means making the right decision regardless of the consequence. Now, what do we tend to do? We look first at the consequence of this decision I'm about ready to make. And if we like or dislike that consequence, then we work backwards to make our decision. But the truth is, what I've learned is just stay focused on making the right decision and let the consequence be what they're going to be. You know, a few years right before I sold my company, one of our largest customers had violated their integrity with us. Now, I tell you what, I had a lot of sleepless nights about that, and I talked to our leadership team about it, and they also felt like that I needed to do something about it. And so they suggested, and I agreed, that I need to share with this very large customer of ours that how I felt about them violating our integrity. Well, I talked to them. And did you know what? They agreed with me. And they changed what the problem was. And you know what? They even gave us more business afterwards. That's the reason why I'm suggesting to you today is stay very focused on what is the right thing to do. You know, one thing is interesting when we go to the grocery store or to a restaurant, you know, we're looking for food that's fresh, organic, has natural ingredients. Is it cage-free chicken or is it, you know, grass-fed beef? Have you ever thought, I mean, besides us looking for healthy food, have you ever given any thought why we are so interested in searching out this food? What people are really looking for is authenticity. Authenticity. For you see, our life is filled with lies and false and misleading information and surveys and research and even the news. And deep down inside of us, we are looking for somebody to stand up, live with integrity, with authenticity. That's what we're looking for. You know, one thing I have learned is that people will follow a worthy leader before they will follow a worthy cause. Well, we've been talking about pursue personal growth. We also talked about live with integrity. Now let's talk about add value to others. You know, I have always felt of having a servant leader's mindset or an attitude is to serve rather than be served. You know, I told you the story earlier about when I was 12 years old, you know, and went out on that first moving job. My attitude is to serve all those employees and not to be served as the boss's son. When I graduated from Ryder High School, and one year we had was called the Marine Physical Fitness Test. and there was hundreds of boys participated in that testing, and it had several events, and you had to meet, they had to be done a certain way, and it was a time event, or the events were timed. Well, the other neat thing about this, man, everybody was after this because the top 3 finishers got to go to Washington, D.C. to compete on the national level. This big stuff. I mean, you can imagine a high school boy, this was really big stuff. So what was interesting is the guy that was number 1, there were 27 seconds between him and number 2. And between number 2 and number 3, there was only 8 seconds. Guess what? I was number 4. There was only 3 seconds difference between me and number 3. Well, I'm not going to be able to go. But I went to my coach and I said, you know, these guys are good friends of mine, and I like to serve them. I like to help them be the best they could be. And it's just in me to serve and not be served, to put the team above myself. So he said, sure. And I tell you what, I stuck with those guys. And it was amazing, you know, how we interacted with each other. I was a big encourager. I was the one that kept pushing. We need to practice more, you know, those kind of things. And you know what was fascinating is by the time they got ready for them to go to Washington, D.C., I was real close of beating out number 2. But the decision had already been made. One thing I learned from that, when I serve people, other people, I always get better. And I think the same thing can happen to you. One thing, we had another button in our company. It was called the inside outside. And what it says is our service to our external customer can only be as good as our service to each other. We call it our internal customer concept. You know, one thing in our company, we had the regular, what they call an organization chart with me at the top and so forth. But we also had an upside down organization chart with me at the bottom, the seller. And I had the responsibility to equip and serve the leadership team. It was their responsibility to equip and serve the supervisors and so forth, all the way up to the frontline people. But guess who was at the very, very top of that organization chart? It was the customer. It was the external customer who was at the top of that organization chart. One thing I've learned is that the most effective leader is one that enhances relationships as they drive for results. One thing I found, most leaders are driving hard for results. Give me results, give me results, give me results. But the most effective leader understands it's not one or the other, it's both. Enhance relationships as you drive for results. I love this quote here from Bill Russell, the basketball player. He said that most important measure of how good a game I played was how much better I made my teammates play. Well, we've been talking about the 3 pillars for success, and that, you know, everyone here in this room can achieve lasting significance by embracing them, and that is to pursue personal growth, to live with integrity, and to add value to others. Now, I'd like to leave with you a final thought, if I may, is that as we go through this journey, what's called life, is you make choices, and your choices make you. And the challenge is for you to be bigger on the inside than you are on the outside. So go and make a difference in people and for people and through people. Thank you very much.